Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much. My great honor to be with you and in your very beautiful university. Have all of you here in the afternoon, really my great honor. So I'm going to share with you the work I've done since 2010 up to last December. And this year, we are going to finish our co-authored book. This is the provisional title, and I hope that our lawyers could approve the title because it seems to suggest a causal relationship and blame the responsibility on Apple. So this is really a serious legal matter, but if we does pass the title, there are double meaning. Dying for an iPhone, on the one hand, it really links to the production sphere, how workers in China are assembling our iPhones, our Lenovo laptop, your HP laptop, and my iPad day and night. But there will be another side of the production as well, it is consumption. We are crazy for an iPhone. We cannot wait any longer to get our iPhone 7 or iPhone 7 Plus. So there are double meanings behind this title. And in the following, I want to share with you what we have found over these years of research in China. And then I will also show you a video. We will open up the floor for your discussions and feedback as well. Okay. Back in 2010, there were 18 suicides at one single company, Foxconn. These were all young rural migrants. They were between 17 and 25 years old, just like you in the prime of youth. So what made them so desperate and kill themselves? What were the causes behind? In their bright red blood, it seems that we can see their pain and their agony. So I have been really interested about what had been going on. There were 18 individual suicides. Would suicide be understood as an extreme form of labor protest? When we start to look at some information online, there is a worker post, and we translate here. Perhaps for the Foxconn employees and employees like us, the use of death is simply to testify that we were ever alive at all, and that while we lived, we had only despair. This is a shared sentiment among the workers. They give up on their life because they feel so desperate to do so. And this is not just an individual or personal issue. There seems to be some underlying reasons behind these individual cases of suicide, which the local media dubbed the Suicide Express. So how to stop the Suicide Express? It becomes really urgent for us to want to understand better. But for Foxconn company, instead of looking into the root cause of all these individual suicides, they just set up the safety net all around their buildings, the dormitories, to catch the jumpers. But will these safety nets really help saving lives? We talked to one survivor. When she jumped from factory dormitory, she was only 17 years old. She was born in 1993. She worked in one business group called IDPBG, Integrated Digital Product Business Group. This business group only produced for Apple. In 2010, not only iPhone 4 is going to be launched in the market, but iPad, the first generation, will be in the market very soon. After 12 days of losing consciousness, she awoke, but only to find out that from the waist down, she became paralyzed. She would no longer be able to stand up. All of her years, the remaining years in her life, maybe end up in a wheelchair or in a hospital bed. After still for a while that she regained some confidence in us, a group of students who had been interviewing her in the hospital, she revealed to us that she just came to Foxconn working for a little more than 1 month, but then she didn't receive her wage payments. And there's no families, no friends around. When she jumped from the 4th floor of the factory dormitory, her mind became blank. So after 12 days, she awoke and talked to us. This is a hard time for her to recall what's going on in the factory, how she ended up in working for Foxconn. I will tell you more about her own stories and other workers' stories later on. But what happened to her is, after some months of very serious treatment in the hospital, she was flown back to where she was from. She had been living in a small village, just like many other peasants in China. The conditions were quite poor, and this is the reason why she wants to leave home to find a good job in the city and support her own 2 younger siblings. Well, you know, there are one-child policy in China, but indeed in rural areas, there were most of the time parents tend to give birth to a number of children, and she, as the bigger sister, her aspiration, her dream is really to make more money to help her younger siblings and the aging parents. But all these dreams become shattered when she herself now become a financial burden to the parents. So this is an individual, very vivid story that we learn from this suicide testimony. And from her own individual story, we try to understand better the whole generation, how these young generation of migrant workers try to make change to their family life and to pursue their own career in the modern cosmopolitan city. So from her case, I start to engage in my PhD project on this issue. So what I learned about is Foxconn is the largest company in China, a Taiwanese-owned company founded by Terry Gou. Terry Gou is the founder, the CEO. Foxconn had the headquarters in Taipei. The headquarter company's name is Honghai Precision Industry Company. Now, it's more than 40 years, and Foxconn becomes the world's largest electronics manufacturer in the whole world. And since 1988, when China opened up to the foreign market, Foxconn also takes the advantage to move its production line from Taiwan to China, and that is the southern part of China. Here it is the largest manufacturing site. You can see the logo, Honghai and Foxconn, and the Chinese name, Fusikang. The company name is meaning that they want to produce computer connectors at the limbo force-like speed. At high speed, they make connectors very fast to cope with the demand of the global brands. This is what we call factory city. They accommodate more than 400,000 employees just in one location. 400,000. There are restaurants, warehouses, sports ground, library, all the facilities like here in the university campus. So actually managers also call these kind of facilities as their campus, just like our university campus. But indeed, this is the keynote of global production. 24 hours, never stop. And when I did the undercover in this factory, I just borrowed the staff card from another woman employee of Foxconn. I borrowed the staff card, put on the uniform. What I see inside the factory is not only the production facilities, there is a wedding dress shop. So they are manufacturing products, but they are also manufacturing dreams for the young workers. If you come to work for us, you will have your work and also build your families. You will have your marriage settled down in the city. So this is the aspiration or the positive reinforcement for the young workers. So on the one hand, yes, it is a very harsh production regime, but on the other hand, there are also positive or incentive there that workers will be driven to work as diligent, as hard as they can and fulfill all these dreams. So there is the wedding dress shop, university, bookshops, and so many facilities in this one single place. As I dug deeper, Foxconn has a number of global corporate clients. The biggest one is Apple. More than 40% of the global revenue is from Apple alone, but as you see all the logos here, Foxconn received big orders from HP, from Samsung, from other Chinese brands, Lenovo, and so on. And we begin a very interesting project to understand the business structure of Foxconn. Indeed, Apple placed so much orders on Foxconn alone. Until 2010, Foxconn was the only manufacturer for iPhone and iPad. Only one single supplier of all these Apple products. Apple, in the very beginning, they produced their Apple I, Apple II, and then their Mac computer, Macintosh. But later on, they just outsourced all these low value add manufacturing to different countries in Singapore and then in East Asia, including Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. But when China opens up in the 1980s, the geographic pattern, the geopolitical pattern have all changed. And this is the process when I look into the business history of Apple. I become so fascinated to learn more about Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, and what is the business philosophy. Here, as we all know, Apple becomes the most profitable tech company in the whole world. There was the diversification of their products, iPhones, iPad, the watches. When Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, then Tim Cook took over to become the CEO. Here is the very interesting quote. An apple a day keeps the rivals away. Not an apple a day keeps the doctors away, but keeps the competitors away. So this is such a big recognition about Apple's runaway success. But Apple's business is not really just about its marketing, branding, or the image. It is as much as related to the whole network of independent suppliers around the world. But most importantly, it is based in China. So here I want to show you the global supplier map of Apple. If you look into Apple's website, you will see this map. What do you see is the biggest bubble or circle that becomes where Apple has the highest number of suppliers based in China. And the largest one of it is Foxconn. Apple also has its production base in northern and southern Latin America, but the biggest supplying base is in China. So now let us take a look at how Apple becomes so profitable. Since the launch of iPhone, as what we introduced in the beginning, now over 700 million iPhones have been sold all around the world as of March 2015. This is the biggest profit generator of Apple. And if you look at this map, you will see, can you imagine what is another product that could have such a high profit margin? From 2009, and then we can project the sales and the profit margin this year and next year, 2018. You will see that the profit margin is still very high. The gross profit margin is almost 60%. That means if an iPhone is selling at $100, then Apple will get the big majority, a lion's share. And this is incredible. Can you think of another product that the profit could be so fat, so high, and given many years on already? But here is even a more dramatic visualization that I want to show you. Apple's gross profit, according to three scholars' estimate, is nearly 60%. And then the suppliers' profit, some will give very high-end components. They are only about 14%. Raw materials, the metals, plastic, it is another 1/5. But the processing fee, it is workers who assemble and finish our iPhone. How much do they got? The smallest slice here is less than 2%. So that means if one iPhone, the value being created is $100, how the distribution of this value? Workers will get the smallest share, while Apple the largest. What is the meaning here is for global trade and transaction, it is not always on an equal footing. It embeds the inequality of power, and this is the buyer-driven model that I want to highlight. Apple dictates the price, product quality requirements and the shipment schedule. There is the big buyer on the one hand, Apple, and then it outsourced production to the developing countries, including China. And Foxconn is the largest supplier. There are negotiations among Apple and Foxconn, including the contract, and I could spread my risk by splitting contracts, give it to Packagon or other competitors. So Foxconn is not really in a very strong position to bargain with Apple, and intense pressures on time, product quality, and other requirements will be transferred directly onto Foxconn workers. These are some slogans that we can find on the factory floor, and we translate here. These are all the slogans that drive workers to work harder to their limit. Achieve goals or the sun will no longer rise. Value efficiency every minute, every second, because time is money. Execution is the integration of speed, accuracy, and precision. There's no best way, but always a better way. And the devil is in the details. You see, every day, every time, every hour, workers are being pushed to work to the highest speed possible because there are industrial engineers who come to them and time how many pieces will be done in 1 minute. And if you are behind, you will be punished and scolded at you are working too slow and you have to keep up. So this is a very stressful environment. And within Foxconn, not only the IDPBG one business group, there are more than 12 business groups that are competing against each other for shortest possible delivery time and highest possible quality standards. This is all the production regime under scientific management or the modern technology of labor control. So we can understand all these issues when we dig deeper by interviewing workers, by getting their own testimonies and share with us their work, their bodily exhaustion, but also what are their desires and hopes for change. So I also spent some time in living in the dormitories. Dormitories is a place where workers will have some time to sleep, to resume their energy and work the next day. And then when they come back, they sleep, and then the other day, they work again. So this is a compressed time and space that would work to the advantage of production. Because here it is not like home. It is a collective space where workers just being put together to lower the production cost. So production and social reproduction spheres combine together in the most cost-effective way. And in these dormitory space, I interview them and understand that this could be a space for workers to their common needs, their own demands, for the dormitory and potential. There are two mechanisms or spheres. They can be and time is so valuable that no one can stop or slow down the production speed. Day and night, every worker is trying to finish the iPad 2, and Apple's people, they care more about the production requirements rather than putting in place the supplier code of conduct. At the beginning of the video, you also see that there are many young people. They have the yellow like labels or markers on their arms. Indeed, they are from different villages in Sichuan province, in different villages in other cities, and they are mobilized in bus, follow another bus to work in iPad. So when iPad factories, Foxconn, came to Chengdu, it becomes the largest investor, and the local governments mobilize all their departments to transport buses of workers to work in the iPad factory. And not only the migrant workers, later on I will tell you indeed something that we cannot see from the video. But here, this slide want to let you know that in Hong Kong, we are organizing protests to make the issue more visible. At the shiny iPad production base, there are dangers that companies and the government have to look into. Because this is not just minor issues about bad canteen food, it is really about life and death struggles. It is an extremely dangerous production sphere. And that these young students, they are from different vocational schools, they are taken into Foxconn to do so-called internships. During my stay later on, I revisit this iPad factory in October 2011, and during that one semester, there were more than 7,000 students who are 16, 17 years old from all over China who have been sent into iPad factories and produced the iPads. So how come, why it happens like this? You see this mockery, a cartoon. These young students, they do not have their eyes to see. They follow the order blindly. They do not have the mouth to speak or complain. They could only have ears to listen to the order. Indeed, here it is a very complicated tripartite collusion here. The schools have to send in a certain number of students. If a smaller school, they send in about 200 students. For the larger ones, they send in 500 in one time. So altogether, there are more than 7,000 student interns here. If the school refuses to send in a certain number of student quota, then they do not have subsidies from the governments, from the educational authorities. And the local government wants to bring in the investment of Foxconn and other big companies, and therefore they promise, we will provide you with land. You see from the video, there are also land grab issue. The land, village land, are given almost free of charge for these companies. And the cost is the whole village are being demolished, including the ancestors' graveyard. So everything has to move to give way for Foxconn. But in terms of human beings, these laborers are really the persons who create value and who sell their labor power in exchange for wage. But for student interns, there is one special feature, because if they do not so-called finish the internship, they cannot graduate on time. So this is a modern form of unfree labor, and we are talking a huge number. In just one summer, there are more than 150,000 students who are coming together and work for Foxconn all around the And Foxconn could now just outsource recruitment to vocational schools and bring in a large supply of young students who are young, productive, and more or less quite obedient to fit in the production regime. And this is the latest fieldwork I did in August. I understand that somehow it is even a more complicated, multi-layered of labor subcontraction here. No longer the vocational schools send in the students directly to Foxconn or other companies, but there are private labor agencies in the middle. So private labor agencies will get some commissions from companies, and then they would negotiate with the schools and bring in some students. So this is even a more indirect and precarious labor conditions that we have found. This would be the article that I already summed up and will be published in this spring. But over all these years, indeed, Apple already understands the problems of student interns. And perhaps in our discussion time, I could share more. What is actually the response of Apple over all these 6 or 7 years in terms of the labor abuses and exploitations in its supply chain? Before I close the talk, I do want to highlight the fact that this is not just a very hopeless talk. If I just end here, it seems to me very frustrated and a despair as well. But indeed, workers themselves have been standing up to fight. They attempt to jump from the buildings, but this time no one is really killing themselves. They just want to catch the media attention by threatening to commit collective suicide. This is an effective way to get some media attention. And some others then will engage in protest and strike to disrupt the continuous flow of production so that they have enough power to negotiate with the senior management. And some government officials will also step in because social stability or political stability becomes so important. Will mediate, put some pressure onto Foxconn to compensate to workers. So this is another side of the complexities to understand China. On the one hand, it is all about economic development, but on the other hand, there are very subtle changes at the grassroots level. The local officials have to maintain certain level of social stability. Therefore, it will put pressure onto Foxconn to pay. And sometimes government also dish out cash to buy peace. So it is using money to buy peace, as some other scholars will say. But apart from the states and companies, what are their responses? It is workers themselves and their supporters. This is actually a campaign, an international campaign, that we visualize the fact that these Foxconn workers are like slaves. We got iPad, iPhones, and watches, but we also got slaves who are at the backstage in producing the products. So we had some success in getting across the media campaign, and this is another action that we organized in Hong Kong. This is a 6-meter tall poster at the shopping mall where Apple store was newly opened in Hong Kong. So on their open day, we also organized the protest. And this is the international mobilization. There are groups in the UK, in Switzerland, and other countries, Germany and other places. There are the solidarity efforts among the labor activists from non-governmental organizations that we get together. And finally, for me and my 2 other mentors, we are completing different editions of our book. This is the first one I co-author with another 2. One is actually Shu Liji. So this is the former Foxconn worker, but he killed himself on the 30th of September in 2014. He had been wanting most to become a librarian at Foxconn, but every time he applies for the job, he was turned down. And later on, what he left to the whole world is only some poems that he spoke about his lives. And every day when he opened the door to go to work, he just feels that he is opening the lid of a coffin, that he is rehearsing that, he is feeling that his life is so colorless, not challenging at all, and that he finally killed himself. But he did have some very important poems that left, and this is a French version. That there are some translations of these poems. This is the Spanish version based on our earlier draft of the book. And there should be a cover here, but because of some technical issue, we do not see the cover. But it doesn't matter. It is the Italian version, and this is the Chinese version. And I want to let you know that this is the Hong Kong Chinese version, but the mainland Chinese version, it cannot be published because our 3,000 copies were completely destroyed by the central Chinese government last year. So how come 3,000 copies were all gone? We had contract with Sociology